Good day to everyone and to Dr. Gracela Armihia. Today we'll be presenting our final semester output in Transportation Management, a research paper focused on the transportation company of our choice, which is Sunlight Air. This will be presented by
Joanna Adu.
Marizel Calillo.
Ari Castañeda.
Hannah Fermil.
Fatima Galdo,
and Hannah Colleen B. Reyes.
Now moving on to the background of the study.
So starting with our background, in this part of the paper, I will be discussing about our chosen company's history so far. Next, please. So our chosen company is the Sunlight Air. Sunlight Air is an airline company owned by Raina Brito, a 26-year-old businesswoman who is also the vice president of Sunlight Hotels and Resorts Group. Its mission is, moving on, its mission is Sunlight Air is a revolutionizer in the Philippine air travel industry, and its vision is Sunlight Air will go the extra lengths to offer the quality service our customers deserve. We will manifest Filipino hospitality in all our services and interactions and implemented advanced process in all aspects of our business. This mission and vision will be implemented through the following core values: excellence, innovation, safety, integrity, and determination. So, moving on. So, regarding the business timeline, so Sunlight Air first established back in July 22, 2019. It received its Air Operator Certificate, or also called as AOC, on the same day. So Sunlight Air had its inaugural flight heading to Busuanga and launched travel bubble packages adapting to the new normal of travel. So by December, it had its inaugural flight to Busuanga, and moving onwards, by February 5, it had its inaugural flight to Clark, then back to Busuanga again. Then moving on, its inaugural flight to Busuanga from Tucuron. Sorry for that. And then for the next one, on April 23, it had its inaugural flight to Puerto Princesa. And on July 22, 2021, it had its inaugural cargo flight to Cebu. And on the July 15th, 2019, it had its inaugural flight to Cagayan de Oro. And lastly, it had its inaugural flight to San Vicente this July 22, 2021. Next, please. Moving on with products and services. As of the moment, Sunlight Air has 4 destinations partnered with travel packages. These travel packages may include a round trip transfer from Manila or Clark to their chosen travel destination. Each destination can also have different inclusions depending on the room you selected. The 4 destinations available for the travel packages are Busuanga, San Vicente, Camiguin, and Siargao. Sunlight Air has partnered with the resorts and these locations to provide their travel packages. The following are the resorts. So in Coron, Busuanga, it's Sunlight Ecotourism Island Resort, and then Tag Resort Coron, and lastly, Marina del Sol. For the San Vicente, there are 4 resorts, namely Banwa Private Island, Bye Bye Beach Resort, Lazuli Beach Resort, and Club Agutaya Resort. For the for the Camiguin, meanwhile, the following resorts are namely Balay sa Baybay, Paras Beach Resorts, and Novu Resorts. Meanwhile, for Siargao, there's only one, namely Baywood Boutique Resort. So their travel packages ranges from 16,500 pesos to 70,000 pesos per person. All these promotions are listed via their social medias in Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Moving on to the next part of the paper is Miss Fatima Galdo.
Chapter 2, Transportation System. Physical elements. Next slide, please. Infrastructure. Sunlight Air uses three ATR 72-500 planes to fly from its main Clark hub to Busuanga, Puerto Princesa, Caticlan, Panglao, Siargao, and Cebu with a focus on lifestyle branding and providing a luxurious experience to its clients. Vehicles. Sunlight Air's flight consists of three ATR-72-500 twin turboprop engines manufactured in France. Sunlight Air's fleet was chosen with the Philippines' functional structure and Sunlight Air's goal of flying short-haul and inter-island flights in mind. Moving on to equipment.
Another component of physical elements is the equipment. Since Sunlight Air do not disclose their specific equipment on their sites, we consider including the common ground support equipment. This includes a variety of aircraft mobility, ground power operations, and passengers boarding procedures. To name a few, we have the aircraft refuelers that refuels the aircraft on the ramp. Air start unit fitted with a pneumatic starter to provide required amount of air to start aircraft engines, and the dollies which are used to move and hold big bulky items from places to places. Ground power units which are transportable power generators that are used to provide electricity to parked planes, while tugs and tractors are used to transport equipment that is too large to be moved by hand, such as the air starters, lavatory carts, and so on. Lastly, there's the baggage conveyor, rather, which is utilized to transfer checked luggage from check-in counter to the plane. That's it for the equipment. Now moving on to the controls.
Controls. Sunlight Express Airways lacks its own traffic control system, forcing it to rely on local air traffic control systems because it aids in the organization and expediting of the safe and orderly flow of air traffic. Moving on to communication systems.
For communication systems, Sunlight Air's flight crew may communicate via wireless data transfer using the very high frequency, also known as the VHF communication technology. It allows planes to communicate with one another and with ground stations. Air traffic controllers must be followed by all aircraft pilots. To facilitate traffic separation easier for all traffic controllers, transponder numbers are allocated to all aircraft in a certain area, which could also be used in case of an emergency on board known as the squawk codes. Next is the location systems. Sunlight Air, which provides seamless satellite navigation services for aircraft location and mapping, uses the Global Positioning System, also known as the GPS, to provide three-dimensional positioning identification for all stages of flight, from takeoff and route and landing to airport ground navigation. Air traffic control centers also employ the radar system to position of aircraft within a 60-mile radius of the radar terminal. Eventually, the non-directional beacon, or the NDB, the most basic radio navigational equipment in aviation, employs a radio route finder aboard the aircraft to identify airway junctions and airports. Pilots may also utilize very high-frequency omnidirectional range, or the VOR, to improve with navigation. That's all for the location system. Now moving on to the human resources.
Human resources. Due to certain circumstances, the company decided not to disclose the personal information to its employees in accordance of data privacy. Sunlight Express Airways employs approximately 500 people and aims to expand the local tourism industry by becoming a household name for Filipinos. Chief Executive Officer and President, the company's on-site overall operations officer who oversee each department. Chief Human Resources Officer, in charge of coordinating all administrative activities and overseeing all company personnel. Chief Financial Officer, in charge of the company's auditory files, ensuring that its finances are properly distributed and maintained. Chief Flight Operations Officer, examines weather data and makes the final decision on whether to change flight routes and controls flight schedules. Chief Commercial and Sales Officer, in charge of Sunlight Airways public advertising and oversees all quality content that is distributed to the public. Chief Aviation Employee Officer, head of managing and supervising the activities of aviation employees, manages its employees as well as their proper client handling. Chief Ground and Maintenance Officer, communicate with staff and maintenance officers to resolve maintenance issues and manage ground activities. Lastly, Chief Cargo and Logistics Officer, responsible for the entire cargo operation, including cargo loading and unloading. Now, moving on to operating rules.
For Sunlight Air scheduling in the middle of the pandemic, next please. In the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, this boutique charter airline delivers easy and unique in-flight service unlike other conventional airlines. It provides the travel bubble for solitary travel, which accommodates 49 passengers each trip, or 70% of the ATR 72-500's maximum seating capacity. For social distancing compliance, having 2 to 3 chartered flights per week only. Next, in moving on to the crew assignment.
Crew assignment. The maximum number of working hours per day, required night rests after a full day of work, maximum weekly load for any crew, and 1 or 2 more days off after 4 or 5 or 6 working days must all be considered in crew assignment. Cockpit crews are likely to face the most stringent restrictions. When compared to other crew members, such as stewards, car operators, and so on the one hand, it makes it more difficult to plan activities for these crews. Because the cockpit crews are physically connected to the aircraft, using optimal chain decomposition simplifies problem solving. Moving on to connection pattern. Connection pattern. Sunlight Air operates dedicated 8-seater private planes from Manila to Busuanga, San Vicente, Camiguin, and Siargao, as well as Clark to Busuanga. And in the coming years, the company plans to add routes to Boracay, Cebu, and Bohol, among other destinations. Its main hub is at Clark International Airport, with spokes at Busuanga Airport, General Santos International Airport, Mactan Cebu International Airport, Godofredo P. Ramos Airport, Ninoy Aquino International Airport, Bohol Panglao International Airport, and Sayac Airport. As a result, their hub and spoke system is both cost effective and a recommended option for passengers. Moving on to cost level of service trade off.
For Sunlight Air's cost or level of service trade-off, because all of the flights are at 70% maximum capacity, which was one of the COVID-19 measures in place, having a load of about 40 passengers each aircraft sacrifices its break-even point during the pandemic. Flying with the travel bubble package ensures flawless travel for visitors at a reasonable price. Costing as high as 26,000 pesos for adults all-inclusive trip and as low as 13,200 pesos for children. While costing, on the other hand, occurs expenses for fuel, labor, aircraft maintenance, airworthiness certification, food and beverage services, and landing fees vary every flight. Overall, aircraft expenditures and people contribute to Sunlight Air's objective of a seamless travel experience by investing in the goal of on-ground and in-flight service quality, even if it sacrifices its break-even point of the airline. Next would be the contingency plans. Through service-oriented and customer-centric transactions, Sunlight Air's travel bubble packages provides an isolated travel experience that is a head start and an advantage in ensuring the tiny aspects of their clients' travel itineraries since the outset. Sunlight Air's CEO, Raina Brito, believes that despite of having 70% maximum capacity, which prevents them from breaking even, these flights benefit their affiliate resorts and hotels. They want to eventually engage more customers by expanding their network to include other places in the Philippines that are currently underserved by other airlines, creating and attaining revenue on a volume basis. This boutique charter airline also hoped to become commercially certified to fly scheduled flights since February 2021. For a new flight to join the market, Sunlight Air has been a symbol of confidence for a smoother travel experience. Its cutting-edge business approach has been designed to go above and beyond to provide outstanding service across the country. That's a wrap for transportation system. Now moving on to the safety measures and protocols.
Moving on to the safety measures and protocols of Sunlight Air, As seen on their website, they showcase their safety measures in two distinct videos showing their process on disinfection. Since the COVID-19 outbreak, various companies and establishments see to it that they adhere to their own set of guidelines to ensure their passengers and crew alike that they are safe and sound. In the first video entitled Sunlight Air Decontamination Video, they covered four different processes of disinfection and protocols: ground disinfection, cabin disinfection, aircraft inspection, and staff safety measures. During the ground disinfection, various areas are being disinfected, especially places which are frequently used, such as baggage check-in counters, boarding gates, and chairs. A new and interesting way that they sanitize bags is through a UV sanitizing light, wherein they scan the luggage and sanitag or sanitag it afterwards. Almost the same is done for the cabin disinfection, wherein they disinfect seats and compartments with disinfectant. Before and after every flight, fogging is done, and every week deep cleaning is executed to make sure it will be ready for use for the next flight. Moreover, the aircraft's engines are inspected regularly and operational checks are done to ensure it will be at its best functioning level, functioning level for the next flight to the skies. Lastly, since ground staff and cabin crew encounter people each day, they have to follow a set of measures to ensure their own safety, such as the mandatory wearing of face shield, face mask, and personal protective equipment or PPE, consisting of gown, gloves, and the mask. An extra PPE is kept in their personal belongings, and every after use it is required to be discarded. With all that said, Sunlight Air maintains all these procedures for them to operate regularly and to guarantee security from the virus and obtain trust from the passengers. Moving on to Ms. Adu, who will present the guidelines of the flights.
Since we are in a pandemic right now, before booking the flight, the passengers should check the requirements and restrictions of their chosen destination. If they already booked a flight, the check in will be automatically processed and the boarding pass will be sent via email, since we are promoting contactless transactions. Other than that, the other protocols are the usual, like the maximum weight of check in baggage is 10 kilograms and 7 kilograms for the carry on bag. At the airport, wearing a face mask is a must, and the face shield is optional. Always practice social distancing. All baggage will be disinfected upon check in at the backdrop counter. Lastly, the passenger's seat number must be called before heading to the boarding gate. Inside the aircraft, the cabin crew will screen the body temperature, sanitize the passengers' hands, and their shoes must be disinfected as well. The passengers are encouraged to scan the QR code to access the soft copy of the briefing card. The hard copies are also available in every seat pocket that is being sanitized every flight. The baggage must be stowed properly either on the overhead bin or under the seats in front. Moving on to the next chapter, the conclusions and recommendations.
Sunlight Air begins with the primary goal of reinventing air travel by offering a new approach of aviation service. With their tagline, Bringing Warmth to the Skies, it refers to the company's commitment to continuously delivering comfort and warmth to every passenger's air travel. They are demonstrating Filipino hospitality in its services and interactions while integrating comprehensive measures in all aspects of its business to make travel as convenient as possible. The airline has been ready for the new normal and adaptable in fulfilling the demands of the pandemic with rigorous health and safety protocols, disinfection practices, and exclusive facilities where passengers can enjoy privacy away from the bustling airport. The company's success following its opening also paved the way for collaboration requests and increased market involvement. Furthermore, they welcome more experienced professionals and becomes a source of hope for aspirants during these difficult times. It recognizes the value of building a substantial sufficient team to provide quality service for people. Thus, we, the researchers, commend the airline for having seamless travel for domestic travelers while having a competitive market. Instead of no travel, they offer isolated travel, which is very ideal for COVID-19 restrictions. Locals must experience the airline services to recognize and appreciate the Filipino market and boost domestic travel. Supporting local would help create jobs for Filipinos and contribute to the social and economic well-being of the country. The airline should cater to other destinations in the Philippines, expand its business, and promote its market to provide further services to the local community. They may benefit from widening their networks and continuously nudge for commercialization. After staying operational during the worst of times for the aviation industry, Sunlight Air continues to be optimistic. Short-haul flights will be safe and more rewarding for travelers as they go to the country's rich and famous destinations. And hopefully, Sunlight Air will continuously bring warmth to the skies. And that's all for our presentation in transportation management. Thank you for listening and stay safe.